Hello YouTube. So Wanderer's first ever rerun is coming up in a few weeks, and with that, there is probably going to be a lot of awful information on him getting spread around. So, I am in the progress of making my own full Wanderer guide, both a video guide and a written guide. But while we wait on that to be done, I wanted to make this video and go over some of the most common misconceptions that I see about him. So with that said, let's just jump right into this. So the first misconception I want to talk about is this idea that Wanderer's charged attacks are better than his normal attacks. This is completely false. In order for a charged attack spam combo to be better than doing N2C, you need to be able to get 14 charged attacks, which is mechanically very difficult to do. And even if you can consistently do this, N2C will still be more damage as long as you are able to implement an A4 dash into it, which most people are going to find way easier than 14 charged attacks. Also, when it comes to the topic of CA versus NA on Wanderer, I've seen people think that Lost Prayers is better than Wanderer's signature weapon, because his weapon doesn't buff his charged attacks. This is silly. Performing a normal attack spam with Wanderer's weapon is always going to be more damage than doing N2C or CA spam with Lost Prayers. There is no scenario where N2C or CA spam on Lost Prayers is more damage than NA spam with TR. The other thing I see with CA versus NA is this idea that Wanderer's normal attacks are single target, so you need to do CA for AoE. This is false. Wanderer's normal attacks have good AoE. His charged attacks do have a bit more AoE, but his normal attacks have plenty enough for most scenarios, especially if you are using a grouper, which is something that Wanderer can very easily do. The actual main benefit of his charged attack over normal attack is that his charged attack is excellent at breaking enemies' poise, but you don't need to spam his charged attack to do this. Just a couple will usually be enough. I will go over Wanderer's combos in more detail in the guide, but to put shortly, if you're using Wanderer's signature weapon, if you have C6 Wanderer, if you have 20% more normal attack speed than charged attack speed, or if you are using Genshin, then you want to do normal attack spam. Otherwise, you will want to perform N2C, and I don't really ever recommend doing charged attack spam. Often, when I see people talk about Wanderer, they speak about him as if he is, quote-unquote, good, but not on par with the top DPS. I think this belief stemmed from people judging his performance on his first days of release, but this was completely unfair. On release, most people didn't have his talents fully built, because he was the second character to use Scaramouche weekly boss materials, and most people had already used those for Nahida. He also uses the DPC set, which released at the same time as him, so no one had the set yet. Wanderer is a hyper carry and deals upwards of 90% of his team's damage, so not having him fully built like this was significantly lowering his performance. But now that he has been out for 5 patches, there is no reason for anyone to still have this perception about his performance. Yet, I still see it. I'm not sure what it's being based on now. If this perception is being based on spreadsheet calcs, then I have no idea whose calcs it's coming from, because the math doesn't support this at all. If it's being based on Abyss runs, I have no idea whose Abyss runs it's coming from, because Wanderer is constantly dominating the Abyss. If it's being based on GC Sim, then that needs to stop right now, because almost everything on GC Sim is just wrong. I feel like when people say things like the whole good but not top DPS thing, they are trying to be positive without overhyping, which is understandable, but like, guys, if something is great, it's okay to say it's great. Let's just call a spade a spade. Wanderer is easily one of the top 2 best DPS in the entire game, and you can make a very compelling argument for him being the best. One of the most common misconceptions I see about Wanderer is that he is inferior to Zhao at low constellations. And when I say low constellations, I mean having up to C2. This misconception seems to be from people looking at 4 gold speedruns from Abyss cycles on Musk Reef without actually knowing the full context. So let's provide the full context and analyze all of these runs, starting with 3.3 since that's when Wanderer came out. In patch 3.3, as we already mentioned, most people didn't have Wanderer's talents fully built because he was using the new weekly boss materials, and most people already used those on Nahida. And if you look at the video for the best Wanderer run on this cycle, Wanderer was using Shimanawas, which is very inferior to DPC, especially at C2, which this Wanderer was. His talents were only level 988, so a lot of damage was being left on the table, and yet he still beat Zhao in clear time here. In patch 3.4, Zhao did get a better overall clear time. Wanderer was better in the first two chambers, but Zhao pulled ahead on chamber 3 because he was able to break the assignment weapons, the big Dorito boss. He was able to break the weapons that it summons and prevent it from going invisible, so he was able to run rotate it, so that's what got him to pull ahead there. And then in patch 3.5, the Abyss Blessing here heavily favored Zhao, giving your entire team damage bonus whenever you lose HP, so obviously Zhao was able to easily max out on that. And yet, despite having an Abyss Blessing that heavily favored him, Zhao was only 1 second faster than Wanderer in 3.5. So, if we reasonably assume that Wanderer would have beat Zhao in 3.5, if not for the Abyss Blessing being heavily favored to Zhao, then the only Abyss cycle where Zhao actually beat Wanderer was 3.4. Musgrave stopped doing speedrun competitions after 3.5, so I can't pull data for 3.6 and beyond from here. However, I have never heard of or seen a Zhao run faster than the fastest Wanderer runs for these cycles. Thus, I think we can say that thinking Zhao is better than Wanderer at low constellation because of one Abyss cycle is kinda dumb. Speedruns aside, let's look at the actual pros and cons of Wanderer versus Zhao at low constellations. Zhao's AoE radius is bigger, he has higher potential in single target, since he can get a lot more damage from collision plunges if the enemy has a big enough hitbox. Wanderer has good AoE, while being able to easily run a grouper, which Zhao cannot. And Wanderer doesn't push enemies away like Zhao does. This single target potential is not reliant on enemies having a huge hitbox like it is for Zhao. And because of Wanderer's range, he has the advantage against flying and mobile enemies, as well as multi-wave scenarios where enemies spawn on the other side of the Abyss. So, TLDR, Zhao can be better in either AoE or single target in the right scenarios, but Wanderer has more scenarios in which he will be better, while also having a big advantage in multi-wave. But at the end of the day, they are both easily two of the strongest DPS units in the entire game regardless. Okay, I get that Wanderer has no poise, and running him with a shielder removes this issue from the equation. However, it is by no means a requirement to use a shielder. What we need to remember is that Wanderer is extremely mobile, able to move while attacking, and also gets free dodges with his Ascension 4 passive. In fact, I believe he is the only DPS that can actually dodge without losing any DPS to do so. He is also excellent at poise breaking enemies. This, along with his mobility, can allow him to simply never get hit against a lot of enemies to begin with. And because of his range, he can also just kill a lot of enemies before they even get a chance to attack him. And against most enemies, you can also simply just press the jump button to fly higher, and be completely out of reach for most if not all of their attacks. Furthermore, if you are using Genshin, she can count as a shielder because of Crystallize being able to take 1 or 2 hits for you, which is usually all you need. This is not to say that you shouldn't use Wanderer with a shield. Shields make him much more comfortable to play, and he has plenty of excellent shield options that he can use while still maintaining excellent DPS. Just don't be misled into thinking that a shield is something that you have to use, because it's not. Wanderer without a C6 Farazan is definitely nowhere near as strong as him with her at C6. However, he can still do plenty well enough without it. As long as Farazan is at least C2, she will still work, and you can make her burst last 2 rotations instead of 1 by using her right before Wanderer in the rotation. This allows you to cheat around her energy requirements, so people think she needs 300% energy recharge before C6 isn't really accurate, since you can easily just cheat around that. I will explain this more in the guide. Wanderer also has plenty of team options that don't use Farazan at all. But I will reiterate that these teams will never be nearly as strong as if you did have a C6 Farazan, but they are still plenty good enough to use until you do get her to C6, which hopefully you will get during his rerun. But yeah, that's about all I wanted to talk about in today's video. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and also let me know if there are any misconceptions that I didn't mention. And also, if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video and subscribe as well. Thanks. Bye.